This is the worst time. Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Oh, not anymore.
Okay. Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to make sure this is working. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Lisa Malvin. I am the Assistant Director for Professional Development Programs here at the Graham School. Before I kick it over to Tyler, I want to give you guys some information about the webinar. This is a co-branded presentation from the University of Chicago Alumni Relations and Development, the Mind Your Career webinars. They offer really great webinars if any of you guys are interested in that, as well as from the Graham School. And I'll stick around after to answer any questions you might have about the programs. In terms of just the tech behind this, I'll be here the whole time if you guys have technological problems or you can't hear or something's happening and you need help. Make sure that you keep your mics on mute, and I will do my best to keep you on mute. Otherwise, there's some feedback. And you can also always turn off your video as well by going to the stop video button at the bottom of the screen. And then you can turn it on and turn it off. I usually keep it off for you guys because I know a lot of people don't like looking at themselves during a webinar, so I'll try my best to keep them off. And as we go through this presentation, I'm also going to send out a short survey afterwards. So if you guys can put your full name so I can take attendance, that would be really helpful. I'll also send out the recording as well afterwards. And I think that's it from me. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Tyler.
Hi everyone, can you hear me all right? Yeah, maybe.
Yes, yes.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you all about networking, obviously, and hopefully the presentation today, there's some things that you take away from it. And so with that, I've included my handle across social media channels, as well as a hashtag. So if that's something that, something stuck with you or resonated with you, please feel free to share that across your channels along with questions and feedback. I don't know if I'll be able to get to them during the session, but certainly able to get to them after. So throughout the conversation today, there are a number of different one-liners that I found or things that I believe that hopefully you find helpful. And so really thinking about and planning with Lisa, the idea behind this presentation is that we know that networking is important, right? It's critical, some say even to our professional success. However, perhaps similar going to the gym or working out, that it's kind of difficult or taxing at times. And a lot of times when we think about networking, it's very transactional, right? And so perhaps puts that distaste in our mouth of trying to go out and meet people or, find a client or, something like that. So hopefully the strategies today will, be helpful as well as think about building meaningful connections. And so let's go ahead and jump right in. Hopefully, and thinking about what we're going to talk about today. So in just a couple moments, I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions to get a sense of where you are, what you think about networking, where folks are coming from. We'll dive into some of the bare bones or the essentials to networking, just so we all sort of start from the same page. Next, we'll talk about, or I'll walk you through going from meeting someone to scheduling that coffee. And what goes into a meeting like that and how do you schedule that, as well as give you the 411 on social media and how that can be a helpful tool for working with and networking and engaging in folks as you go out and find those connections. Couple stories to share. So thinking about the lessons that I'm sharing with you today and those tips and strategies, some things that I found helpful in my own life to hopefully illustrate some of the strategies that we're going to talk about. And then going to have some ideas and some additional tips around goal setting. Where do you go from here? And of course, there'll be time for questions and answers. And so before we jump into the attendee pulse, there are a couple things that when I think about networking, just sort of these mantras or adages that sort of the mindset that I have. So like with from my perspective, with anything in life, relationships are so important, and especially when you think about building meaningful engagement and meaningful relationships, it's a lot about the long game, right? So not how can, from this one coffee or this one meeting, how can I get something from this person, but what can that relationship look like? And if you take the mindset of, there's might not pay off, or there might not be that immediate reward after 1 or 2 or 3 interactions, but over the course of a relationship. So if you really take that longer approach, the long game, for building connections and relationships. So I think regardless of what the interaction looks like, if you go into it with having a focus on what can you learn from this person, what can you learn from this relationship, you'll always be successful, right? It might take you in a different path or down a different road than you originally planned or hoped. But by focusing on the piece of learning about a career, or learning about an industry, or learning about this opportunity, or oftentimes I found that I learn more about myself, and I have greater clarity around what that looks like for myself. So like you'll realize that, it might look easy, but the first couple of times that you go through some of these steps, it's going to take some time and some practice. And it's not, some folks out there are talented at it. Something that for me, it's taken a lot of work of, not only being able to go out and do it and walk into a room, and I still have challenges with that of, going up to people by myself, and starting a conversation. And then, how is it that you can engage them in real conversation, as I like to think. And then over time, as you build up your plan and set out your goals, you'll be able to practice some of these skills. And again, really focus on building those meaningful connections, and those relationships. So the first couple of times, and even as you go throughout this over your career and your journey, you're just sometimes going to have to laugh it off. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say, I wish I would have done something differently, or wow, that really didn't go over well. So don't be too hard on yourself. Know that it's going to take some time, that it takes some practice, and be okay with being in that learning or that growth mindset of, taking this perhaps not so great experience, incorporating it moving forward. Be curious. So as you meet with these folks, I would like to think that no questions are off limits, but really as you do your research, as you think about it, and as we dive into some of these other strategies, and perhaps this goes back to the learning piece, but always figure out and try and identify what you can soak up, what's going to be most important, and really just take that curious approach. And lastly, don't be afraid to ask for help. So as you're going through this process, if you know people who you think and you admire who can network well, or you are looking to be connected to someone, sort of a third connection, and someone somewhat well, that can introduce you, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's all about starting and expressing your goals and opinions and ideas with someone, and then them being able to use that information and connect you to someone else. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into the essentials. So thinking about this is just a foundation or a framework to hopefully get us all on the same page. So now at this point, if you could open up a new web browser or maybe pull out your phone, and we're going to try something that hopefully will work. I've done it for in-person presentations, but first time doing it with webinar. So if you want to go to this website, menti.com, that's www.menti.com. And once you're there, you'll see a screen that asks you to enter a code. The code is 744758. And once you're there, you'll see a couple questions. I'll leave this up for just another moment longer. So again, that's menti.com and enter code 744758. And so we're going to go, let's go ahead. And, my apologies. Slightly different code. All right, let's try that again. Sorry, everyone. All right, code 68569. Sorry about that. Thanks for those who are pointed that out. So hopefully the code works now. So the first question is, what comes to mind when you think of networking? So this is an open response question. Great. All right, awesome. Thank you all for your flexibility. Great, let me go ahead and So there'll be a couple different questions, but you can see this is kind of a fun interactive tool of the larger the words get, the more folks are indicating that that's what comes to mind when you think of networking. So you can see there's daunting, scary, the idea of getting a lot, but perhaps not having to say a ton. People obviously involved, stressful, complex. So I share a lot of these similar feelings at both sort of exciting, talking, meeting, as well as scary and stressful. So hopefully we'll be able to overcome some of those as well as get you prepared for the next. So hopefully we can get the same. Great, so that's working. So there should be second question. All right, so now you should see a second question on your screen that says, I network because. So jobs, right? Whether you're looking for a new job, informational interview, learning more about other folks. Career switch, someone told you was a good idea, right? As I'm sure we've all been told. Some of us genuinely enjoy meeting new people. Some of us also have jobs where we need to meet with folks regularly, whether it's a networking event or coffees or whatever the case may be. Awesome. So you can see that it looks like, as I sort of suspected, that most folks are looking for new jobs, sort of followed by or tied with a career switch, right? A lot of career changers. And then that is followed by someone told you it was a good idea, right? Here I am also telling you that it's a good idea. So that sort of makes sense. So this next question is just trying to get a better sense of hopefully we can tackle some of the issues, right? So when you think about going on a networking, when you think about the idea, I get caught up or I get hung up with this issue, right? So whether it's, how do you ask someone for a business card or how do you enter a conversation? Some of those ideas, whether it's what do I do on LinkedIn? How do I connect with someone after? So you can see some of those. So just take a minute. This is the last question. Great. Yeah, the awkwardness. Yeah, that sucks, right? It happens even for folks, I've definitely had a fair number of awkward coffees and conversations. Starting the conversation, not right. So that seems like a pretty consistent theme. Online networking, great. So we'll tackle that with LinkedIn. Building an actual relationship. Yes. It's okay that not everyone's going to accept your LinkedIn invites. That's just sort of their preference. Figure out how to, perhaps craft those a little bit better. So we have tools for that. How do I provide value rather than just looking for help? These are awesome. Yeah. How do you start? So a lot of these we'll cover today. And certainly, you have a way to reach me. So if you put something in here, I didn't totally address it, which might end up happening. Feel free to include that in the follow-up survey or reach out to me directly. Would love to be able to continue the conversation. Yeah, lots of things that we're definitely going to talk about today. And certainly a lot of these topics could be their own webinar. But so we'll try and focus on a number of these key ones. Awesome. All right, so thank you all for that. Let me go ahead and switch back to PowerPoint. And great. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you all for that. So just a reminder, some key reasons why we might network, right? To grow the network, to grow the people in your circle. A lot of us oftentimes do it and really only think of networking to find a job, which is important, but having those, that network and those relationships outside of the job search time is really, I think it's even more critical. Switching careers, right? So career changers, meeting new people, building relationships. This is going to be a key one. And then, according to the New York Times, networking is, really thinking about how is that you can activate and utilize the contacts within your network, right? And so I think this speaks to really thinking about those relationships and the afterthought of relationship building, right? So you have to have a network in order to be able to activate it and utilize it. And so really making those connections early on. That's what I think about. There's another one as we think about there's a quote that I like that I think is, networking is like a little exercise, right? It's good for you. You probably should be doing more of it, but often you just don't feel like it, right? And so by the end of this, hopefully we'll have some easier ways to, scale up the work that you do when you think about networking. So when we think about networking opportunities, that's, I think, where a lot of us can get stuck, or I've heard that folks get stuck. So first one is, right, so how do you find the organizations, events, and groups? How do you find opportunities to network? So when I think about this question, I think the best solution is to think about what those activities, those organizations, what are your interests? Make a short list, and then sign up for those newsletters. Sign up for, is there a way that you can get more involved with those organizations? There's a lot of, professional organizations that you want to do, right? So whether it's professional conferences, development societies, there's nearly every one of these type of organizations for all industries. So what is it that you can reach out to? So once you identify either the industry that you currently work in, the industry that you're interested in learning more about, or the industry that you want to transition into, see if they have newsletters or professional events. So a lot of my work is done both in the international space. So, there's an organization through the University of Chicago that I subscribe to their newsletter and attend a lot of events, as well as the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. So those there's an overlap in my interests as well as my work. And so I, use those two groups to find a lot of events, right? So that's just another example of ways that you can meet folks. And then lastly, as you think about learning more information, learning where a lot of these skills come from, as well as finding out about these networking opportunities, all sorts of groups nowadays have a newsletter, right? So like I mentioned, that I'm plugged into those few groups that send out events send out emails about events. It's something that, maybe start with a few. So going back to the first point of finding and identifying your interests and really being able to create a list off of that. And going from there. I know that Lisa and her advising team also have some great resources for finding professional organizations that can help you as well. So as we think about so you found an organization, as we think about going to an event, right? I've got 10 tips for you that hopefully will be helpful as you think about sort of things to do, things not to do. And so while you still might have some fear, these tips sort of cover all types of events that will help you navigate and network with success. So, a lot of research says that the first thing we should do is smile, right? So you shouldn't immediately walk into a room and greet everyone with a smile, but, certainly take a look around, be cheerful, and that when you do find those folks to join or that pair to join, do it with a smile, right? So be approachable, stick your hand out to shake their hand. So smile is really a great way to make someone feel good and more open to meeting someone. So oftentimes, I found that I'm more successful in networking when I either know that I'm going to meet someone there, or I bring someone with me. So whether that be a work event or a different organizational event, it's much easier to meet people when you feel like that you both have a structure or a person or a support system, as well as being able to join the conversation or look for that friend if you're trying to exit that conversation. My advice to you is bring someone with, or know that you have a resource there, but try not to stick with them the entire time. So as you go to these events and think about it and you see people, it's much easier to join pairs of people instead of groups, right? So you have that awkward, how do I enter? What do I say? How do I interrupt the conversation? How do I not lurk behind everyone? And so joining pairs, maybe it's the table, much easier to do and to break into with that conversation than it is with larger groups. So that's another piece of advice. So as you're talking with folks and learning more about them, it's important not to be that person who talks only about themselves. So it might be kind of difficult to do, especially if you're a little bit nervous. But it's important that there's sort of a volley back and forth. Like if you think about a volleyball going back and forth over the net, how are you asking questions? What does that conversation look like? And so sort of a follow-up piece to that advice is to listen more than you talk, right? So sometimes for those of you who said you might be a little bit shyer, that's okay. Just come with a couple set of questions that can keep the conversation going. So this way you're really able to listen more than you talk and be able to follow up with that person. So especially at some networking events, it can be difficult to hear folks. So make sure that when you introduce yourself, once you share information, as you're having the conversation, try and speak clearly and loudly as appropriate. That's important. That's this way someone doesn't necessarily have to lean over or hear you mumbling. So that's another piece of advice. So whenever you're at a speech or a presentation or a networking event and there's someone big within the organization, I like to think don't corner the heavy hitter. So this is someone who is there to meet with a bunch of different folks. Totally okay to go up, introduce yourself, ask a follow-up question if they gave a speech, or engage with them for a few moments, but you don't monopolize their time was what I like to think of. It's great to meet with other folks and really with that piece. So this is something we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation, but how do you set goals for a networking event, right? So is it that you want to have 5 new conversations, or you want to meet with 3 folks in this specific industry? Do you get 2 business cards after? How do you follow up? What do those goals look like? Again, it's important to set them, and we'll definitely talk about them a little bit later. So we may have all experienced this, where there's that one person in the room where they're just giving their business card out to everyone, right? Regardless if you had a meaningful conversation, they're just passing it out to everyone. And so what I like to think about is be selective with who you give your information to, who you're contacting, what those relationships and engagement look like. So really, rule of thumb is, be selective in the sense that, feel free to give it to the people you've chatted with and had conversations with, but, and certainly the people you're interested in following up with, but don't give it to everyone who walks by. So with this, you might have 30 seconds or so to maybe even less than that to share your elevator pitch. And this is something that, should be short, succinct. So this way someone has a clear sense of what you're doing. Try not to overshare, right? So you might be working on a number of different projects, or, maybe you're in graduate school and you work. Share a little bit, so this way they have some follow-up questions and ask a little bit more about what you do and what that might be like. So you've gone through the event, you set your goals, you connected with a couple of folks, and so that is something where sort of what comes next, right? So the scheduling that follow-up, how do you set up a coffee? And so really when I think about it is, you obviously, something from their conversation, something from their position or what have you, engage your interest, right? And so you obviously want to have an idea of why you want to meet with them, but really answer that question. Why do you want to meet with this person, right? What are you hoping to gain? Maybe it's that they can help connect you to someone else. Maybe they said something that was really interesting to you. Whatever those reasons, make sure you have a clear sense of why you want to meet with them. So thinking about it, it's important to follow up, right? So if you interested in meeting with someone, I recommend, follow via email within 1 to 2 days, or whatever that method of communication is. If you didn't get their business card or didn't get their email, find them on LinkedIn. You can tweet at them, whatever the case may be. It's really important that you do that within probably 1 to 2 days of meeting with them. It's important also to mention how you met. So, while this one networking event might have been the only networking event you did that day or that week or whatever the duration may be, but you might not know what other activities this person has been up to. And so mention, try and be as specific where, what you spoke about, if you have that. So include a personal detail from your conversation. And then going back to it, make a specific ask. So, do you want to meet with them for coffee for 30 minutes to talk about, how to leverage this skill and move forward? Maybe, asking them for that specific advice just from the beginning might be a little much. So, I have a couple examples written here of both sort of the template that I use, as well as some examples specifically of outreach that I've done that has been successful. But again, specify a time, specify what you're hoping to get out of the conversation. Really is important. So a couple things to keep in mind, right? So prior to setting this conversation up, you really want to research the individual. So look at their LinkedIn, do a Google search, have they worked with organizations where you want to work? Do you have other similar connections? Are they involved with nonprofit groups? What does that look like? So try and learn as much about the person as possible. So that can help decide your questions or inform your questions. And then at a minimum, I say, I recommend 3 to 5 questions of things or areas that you want to know about from this person. So, you might not have you might not get answers to all of your questions, or certainly even be able to ask all of your questions. But this is a great way that I found to really reduce the awkwardness from, in the conversation. And I have some examples of what type of questions to ask. But again, I think this goes back to the question of, why do you want to meet this person and being curious? So that'll really help engage your questions. And if you can't come up with these 3 to 5 questions, maybe there's a reason that you either think a little bit harder, or maybe it doesn't make sense to meet with this person right now. So that's sort of as you prepare for the meeting. So a couple examples. So this is the template that I usually use. So, dear so-and-so, I enjoyed our conversation at this event. I'm following up to see if we could schedule a 30-minute coffee next week to continue discussing Y topic. Please let me know the best way to schedule, best or cheers, or however you want to close that, Tyler. So this is something that, is specific. You mention where you met, and you talk about, or you identify exactly what you want to talk about. and you offer to schedule a meeting. So here, you can see this as an example. This is actually outreach that I did to my current boss, which helped me, which she found very impressive that she shared with me. But I can talk about this is through LinkedIn. So specific as to where we met, was hoping for more opportunity or the opportunity to connect. And that I was sort of taking on the burden of doing reaching out and trying to find a time by reaching out to her at her Cristo Rey, her employer email address, excuse me. And so this is something that if you can find their information of how to reach out, or if you have their business card, this is a great way to do that. And again, just another example of what to do. So you're having the coffee, it's showtime, sort of what exactly happens. So again, be on time, right? So as you schedule it, as you think about it, try and determine how much time it'll take you to get from wherever you're going to be before to wherever you need to go for the coffee or your drink or the chat or whatever that looks like. Allow for a little extra time with traffic, and especially as you think about weather, as we go into winter time here in Chicago, be a little bit more conscious of that moving forward. So this is something that I found successful, and through a lot of research that I've read in a couple other books, they all recommend starting and ending with small talk. So you can ask them about how's your week going, what's your day like, what have you been up to this morning, do you have a far commute, maybe you can bring up the weather, right? Something to sort of start the conversation before you sort of dive into the meat of what the main content of why you're meeting. This typically warms folks up, and that through developing this sort of warm up and the small sense of conversation, likely feel a deeper sense of connection. So they're more likely to be chatty and open up those conversations or answer your conversations. One thing that I usually use as we're walking out and going our separate ways, I ask about, what does the rest of your day look like? Both because I'm genuinely curious as I'm getting to know this person, but also it's sort of a nice softball question that you can end the conversation with as you're going your separate ways. So this is a great opportunity to really, prior to this meeting, to refine and deliver your elevator pitch. So in this context, you might have a little bit longer. You might be able to expand upon the couple different things that you're working on if you have a number of those. So again, it's really more conversational and less of a pitch. But again, what you do, the type of organization you work for, what you're hoping to do, and maybe some of the things that they're day to day. Again, it shouldn't be a few minutes, but maybe a minute or so. And then, the person can go back and forth and sort of, again, thinking about that volley in volleyball or that serving. That's helpful. So again, prep your questions. I wouldn't think about it like an interview and that, write down responses, but, have a few questions in mind, and we'll talk about those examples in a minute. And again, something that, as we saw in one of those first charts, or first pieces, is that the awkwardness sucks. Like, it still happens as I, meet with folks and I go through these steps and I prep my questions. And there's still awkwardness. And that's, I think, because we're dealing with humans, right? And so not everyone is as well versed at having those conversations. But these few things hopefully will help prepare you for the coffee and the conversation. And that also by having your questions, you'll sort of know where to go next. And hopefully by asking open-ended questions, which we'll get to a little bit later, that'll keep the conversation flowing. Lastly, I have a few examples on this slide, but it's important to thank them, both in person and via email as a follow-up. And there's this tactic that I like to use. It's called using you language. And so, for example, rather than saying the advice that you provided helped me think about X or Y or Z, you can say your advice prompted me to rethink the way I was considering X or Y topic, or you helped me better understand this. Thanks to you, I now know what the next step should be. So really focusing the thank you on them, and using that you positive or that you centered language. Your experience painted this picture. It really helps cement how helpful they were, and makes them feel good about what they're able to do for you. So here's some questions. How did you find yourself in this industry? What is your day-to-day like? I recently read that you were, part of the acquisition or acquired X firm or whatever that might have been. What was it like to be part of that? Are you involved with any professional organizations? If so, which ones? By doing your research, you can probably figure out that you can ask which professional organizations they're part of, or that you can ask a question. So, I see that you're involved with, this organization. What's that like? Do you recommend it for, wherever you are in your career? So those are just some pieces that you can use your research information, not too invasively talk about it, but just sort of solicit their advice. So with that, let's turn to social media. So this is really important as I think about our digital presence, the tools that we have to making it easier to build those connections. And some of you had mentioned, how do I make sure, or how do I engage with folks on LinkedIn and Twitter? So a couple pieces of advice, and then we'll keep going. So it's important to always have your LinkedIn profile updated. Hopefully most of you, if not all of you, have a LinkedIn profile. It's important to make sure that your information reflects who you are. So be active, right? So post, share, like. There's a great thing now where if you see someone who has a new job, or they're getting a promotion, or they posted something or have an anniversary, LinkedIn will automatically give you options to respond to that. Makes it fairly easy to do. This is something that I enjoy doing, and it also shows that you're active. So whatever you look like, or rather whatever you decide that you want to do in terms of how often you want to post or how often do you want to share, whether it's spending 5 minutes a day, in the morning, whether it's sharing one post per week or per day, whatever that looks like, set those goals, identify and think about how you can go from where you are currently to making a small nudge or amplifying that a little bit more. So with this, after this webinar, I encourage you to find 3 groups on LinkedIn. So whether that could be professional groups, could be alumni groups, find 3 pages that you want to follow. It could be organizations where you work, have worked, organizations you're interested in. So this way you're seeing more content in your home screen. And again, connect and follow with folks. So I've been using the follow feature a lot more lately. So I typically, if I'm doing some research on someone or I see that someone spoke at an event, I might not know them all that well, but I will use, so I don't feel appropriate connecting with them. So I'll follow with them, or I'll follow them. And I found that to be successful. And I've actually had a couple of folks follow me back. And even as we're at networking events and having these conversations, like, oh, I know you from LinkedIn. We follow each other. So while we're not connected, I think that follow feature is still pretty cool, especially as you're just beginning to build some of those relationships. Again, LinkedIn has really become prolific in using hashtags. So that's something that I recommend that, they also give you recommendations for how to use those based off of your posts. And this will help you increase the visibility of your posts, which can also be helpful. So again, there are 3 takeaways for LinkedIn. The first one is just be active. Really as you think about it, is making sure that your message matters. And so this sort of ties into number 3, be concise, be direct, be descriptive. So, it's how can you be active, how can you share, how can you post, but also how can you channel your message to where it's maybe a little bit more positive. You're sharing information related to your interest or your work, yet descriptive, right? So how can you, again, as we think about being in a time where there's so much content out there, how can we make sure that our information is and our posts are being read? So again, you'll see a lot of the same advice for Twitter, but making sure that your bio's up to date. What does it say about you? How can you share more information about who you are, what you're looking to do? I found that this is a great way, and I have a lot of fun engaging with attendees, speakers, and hosts at these different events. And I have a few examples of both of these that you'll be able to see. So that's exciting, right? So you can use this to tweet at folks, to share that you're coming, to ask questions, to use hashtags. It's a really great way to share content and engage with other folks. Again, I think that is pretty self-explanatory as you think about how to work with and meet new folks. Again, using hashtags, especially when you attend events. This is a great way to both use them and search and engage with other folks digitally, before, during, and after the event. And so sort of, again, 3 pieces of advice. Tweet in advance is something that I really recommend. Retweeting and liking others. So how can you share their content? How can you become their social friend, and then be intentional. So similar to the idea that you don't want to go around a networking event and hand or give everyone your business card. You don't want to be retweeting and following everyone or everything that they're saying. So sort of be intentional with the type of work and the type of things that the interactions and engagement that you have with them. Because you don't want it to be transactional. Again, you want it to be very intentional with the way that you're engaging them. So a few examples. So this is on Twitter. So at the time I was looking forward to attending an event. So you can see there's a couple different hashtags. I engage with the speakers, their organizations. Then I even included a schedule of the event, right? So this is one example. Similarly, I go to a lot of networking events and events at the City Club. You can see there's pictures from one presentation from the CEO of 1871, right? So she and I were able to engage a few lines about some of the information that she presented. You can see this is something that actually someone did to me. Thanks for connecting and becoming part of my LinkedIn network. Glad to be a resource. Please feel free to reach out anytime. So that's not something that I've done, but obviously I'm including it because it was memorable to me. So that's another piece of advice that you can do as a follow-up. And then lastly, there's a guy that I follow who has a weekly or biweekly sort of curation of articles called Awesome Humans. And so I saw this article or this post on Twitter and I tweeted at him. And so this was a really cool way, at least that I found, to engage with someone. He's also on the board of directors for a nonprofit organization that I'm interested in becoming more involved with. So you can see you can sort of network, approach, engage these folks from multiple perspectives. So as we continue to move through, moving into the sort of the third section. So at this point, I hope that it's helpful as you think about the strategies that I've shared, and then now sort of putting them into practice of engaging the different things and ideas that I've shared of being able to, what is this like in real life? So the first one is tweeting with Tom is the story that I call it. So Tom and I, work in the similar education space. He's based in New York. And, a number of years ago, he followed me on Twitter, didn't really know who he was, knew of him. So we, engaged a few messages and started, retweeting, liking the posts that we were sharing of each other. I reached out to him as I was thinking about job searching, asked him for help with my resume. And then the few times that I've been to New York for work, he and I have gotten together. So this is, just an example of really how is it that you can engage with folks socially and sort of what can come of that. Just being open to whatever that piece looks like and how is it that you can, again, build those relationships virtually. When I first started chatting with Tom, I had no idea that it would lead to him passing along my resume to his boss's boss's boss for conversations. And Tom in many ways has become an informal mentor of mine. And so that's just one example of the way that, social media can lead to that. The next example focuses around volunteering. So there's a nonprofit organization that I'm really involved with, and sort of 2 or 3 years ago started volunteering with them in a very limited capacity, and then that grew into more of a leadership volunteer role. And I got to work closely with one of the staff members. And so he had an opening on his team, and he had encouraged me to apply. I interviewed for the role, which was great, right? I hadn't even thought that sort of this informal networking of being a volunteer, of working with this individual and the entire team could possibly lead to that. Unfortunately, for a number of reasons, the position didn't seem to be the right fit for me, but we still stayed in touch. I still volunteered with the organization, and then that has led to him, while he's actually left the organization, we're co-chairing an advisory board for the organization together. So again, sort of being open to whatever that longer term relationship looks like, and really being open to learning, right? So understanding that a lot of growth and opportunity can come from the relationship. So what is that longer term? I mean, I think it's just 2 or 3 years for both of these relationships, and really putting in the time and effort, and really, again, just being open to what that conversation and that relationship can look like. So this next one, and this is probably the most interesting or captivating story as it relates to a lot of everyone's interests, is so how is it that you can take that coffee, how can you use that limited and brief interaction to begin the conversation around a job. So this was earlier, so actually about a year ago, when I met a leader in my industry at a networking event. I knew who he was. I knew we had some shared connections, but he was staffing the event, and so I didn't want to interject or go up and introduce myself. But we connected at the end, and it was with that we were chatting and found out that we had a number of shared interests. And so we were able to, set up a coffee after. We exchanged contact information. I followed up with him, which I believe there's another example of that as well. And so with that, we got coffee, just sort of the informal questions of like, so what's it been like at this organization? How do you think about these challenges our industry is facing? So sort of those lighter softball questions, not super personal. And then sort of he actually led the conversation of thinking about work, and so the openings on his team. And so with that, the conversation evolved, and over several months, this led to a real job. So I worked with him for a brief time, but really, as you think about it, how can you invest in that relationship? Again, thinking about being open to learning, as well as taking the risk of having that conversation of just focused around professional development. So again, using these strategies to how is it you can follow up? How can you guide a conversation in terms of what do you talk about? Then moving forward with that job are just some strategies. And then finally, sort of bringing it all together, sort of bringing it all central is this last story. So this is with someone that I met at a networking event. We were sitting at the table of probably about 10 or so people. As the event was really loud and this person was sitting, a few people away from me, we didn't have the chance to connect. But with that, we both worked in the same sort of niche field, and were able to talk about that a little bit. And so, as I think about, and as I had set my goals, and for this event, I was like, all right, so I want to talk with, at least 3 people. I want to get business cards with at least, or from 2 of them, and then I want to be able to set up and have those conversations with those folks. I reached out to her on LinkedIn. As you can see, that was one of the examples earlier from Morgan, and set up some time to get a coffee. And then with that, I knew that she had an opening on our team. Again, we continued the conversation several weeks later, and that led to a job offer. And actually, that's my full-time job right now. So thinking about, how is it you can use the follow-up skills, as well as, thinking about this job opportunity and taking the next step. So really, again, not to say that you will have this type of success with all of these. I can assure you that there are, just as many, if not 2 or 3 times as many stories that I could share with you about how things didn't go as well. From some events there, I've had the chance to meet with folks at the event, and I reached out to them on LinkedIn, or, I followed up and nothing came of it. And that's just something that you kind of have to accept. So again, being okay that it's going to be difficult and that not everything's going to go according to plan. So with that, as we think about wrapping up the webinar and definitely creating some time for questions, just additional strategies and ideas that I have around putting together an action plan, right? So setting goals. So I like to think of a 4-3-2-1 model, right? So for me, this is important, and I sort of separate these in that the 4 and the 3 are separate from the 2 and the 1, right? So 4 events. So whatever you set your goal for the number of events that you want to go to, whether it's per month or per quarter, identify that number. And you can adjust these as you see fit, but sort of the sliding scale and how it decreases, I think is helpful. So for me, I try to go to 4 events every quarter. I'm also in graduate school, so that takes away from that, and definitely some challenges of being able to network and with the class conflicts and work and things of that nature. But so 4 events. And from that, hopefully you can get 3 business cards or 3 conversations or connections. And so then from there, I set a goal of, from those 2 people, because they're not always as great, I try to set up at least 2 meetings, 2 coffees, 2 drinks, whatever the case may be. And then from there, I hope that will generate 1 lead for those of you who might work in sales, or 1 meaningful or beginning conversation or connection. And so this 4-3-2-1 model has been really successful for me, and I think it's also easy to set goals with and digestible. So again, that's just sort of the way that I think about perhaps you can and should set your goals. Lastly, there's a couple things that I want to share, and then we'll open it up to some questions. So I know one of the difficult pieces of networking is remembering someone's name, right? So I saw this and I was like, wow, someone, so nice to meet you in a conversation. Not even a moment later, you already forgot their name. So with this, I think the biggest piece of advice, and perhaps you've heard this before, so I don't know that it's necessarily all that groundbreaking, but is use their name 3 times in a sentence or a conversation after the introduction. So this way it cements their name in your head, right? So, wow, it's nice to meet you, Dave. What are you up to this weekend, Dave? Or, how do you, what brought you to this event? So using it at the beginning or the end of a sentence really helps you cement it in your name. So you've met with some folks. Now you have to exit the conversation, whether, whatever you want to leave, whether you set additional goals, whether the conversation just is kind of boring and you don't really know how to do it. And this is something that I'm personally working on. And so these tools help me as I go through that. So some examples. So you can say, using the Dave example again, Dave, it was really nice to meet you. I think I'm going to go introduce myself to the speaker. Dave, I promised myself I'd meet 3 new people before I leave tonight. Thank you so much. It was great connecting with you. These are just 2 examples. And then, something that I've been reading lately is that if you do leave that conversation with one of these examples or some other piece of why you have to exit the conversation, do what you're going to say you're going to do. If you're going to go to the restroom, then, or if you want to go meet someone else, then do that, right? So, and I say this because let's say Dave sees you as you exit and then you run into someone else and you don't actually go to the bathroom. How does that make Dave feel? So that's just another example of, when you exit a conversation, when you leave, do what you're going to say you do. Of course, people understand that you get caught up, but it's just important to not change your plan, especially as you think about how that might affect what this new connection might think of you. And lastly is thinking about asking open-ended questions. So these are a couple pieces, describe for me, what was that like? Tell me about what brought you to. So these are just some examples that you can use that as you think about developing those conversations and those questions, whether it's in a networking event or it is in that one-on-one copy of that conversation. Hopefully these will help keep the conversation going. And so lastly, just some things that I found helpful. You'll have access to all of these links, but so some articles and books of different authors and that I've read that I found are helpful, as well as some resources that, hopefully can guide you as you think about moving forward in networking. So with that, Lisa, I will turn it over to you, I think, for questions. I think that's how that works.
Yeah, we could do it that way. You guys can use the chat to ask your questions directly, and then Tyler, if you can read them off, or I can ask all the.
Yeah,
we won't have enough time to do all of them, but we'll try our best.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. So Elizabeth, you asked, how might you navigate a situation where someone asks for your business card, but you don't think it would be helpful for them to connect, or helpful to connect with them? So I think if I were in that situation, I think the easiest piece of advice would be just simply to give them your contact information, because you can always not follow up later. It might sound bad, but for me, I'd rather mitigate the awkwardness or the sort of negative or difficult conversation in person. And so, you may, you can simply say if you forgot them. That's another example. It's a really good question. And so hopefully those 2 pieces are helpful as you think about navigating that awkwardness or the difficult questions. Great. How do you network on a budget? A good question. So for me, when you go back to your list of your interests in organizations, I think identifying those organizations, seeing what free events they have, and as you think about doing coffees, maybe it's just a few bucks. You don't always have to, if you're the one who initiated the conversation or the request, you don't always have to pay for the other person's coffee. That's okay. You can always come to the coffee shop with a reusable mug. Maybe you schedule something at 9 o'clock in the morning. You're both on your way into work. You can come with the coffee that you bring from home. Hopefully that is helpful. Shannon, I think you're the individual who asked a question. If not, we can definitely follow up and talk a little bit more about that. So Serena, I believe you asked about networking in a foreign country. So thinking about, with that, it's a lot of virtual networking, I would imagine. So I know, and Lisa, you can talk about this in a minute, but I know that the UChicago Alumni Association has a lot of, and I'm forgetting the name on it, but there are a lot of virtual opportunities to connect. And so following a lot of the webinars, they have a tool where they place people in rooms and you can do sort of a 5-minute conversation. I apologize, I'm forgetting the name, but that's a great way to do it. I'm sure that there are other organizations that if you have an interest that you can either reach out to or get on their list host of being able to engage with them that way. Oh, Elizabeth, okay, I got your follow-up question. So Elizabeth, let's connect offline about that and we can talk. Yep. So Larry, I'm happy to go back to that slide. You'll actually get a copy of the PowerPoint, so you'll have those links. But real quickly, So this way you can have a screenshot of that. Let me see. Yep. So Anne, let's go back to a LinkedIn cold call, which would be something like, let's see here. So this is something that I would use this type of example. It looks like it's as specific as to a cold call, but I can send you some language around what that looks like specifically for sort of like a cold call intro. If you haven't interacted with the person, that's something that would be fairly easy to do. You can say something like, "Dear so-and-so, I'm interested in learning more about this field. I see that you have a great deal of experience and would be interested in chatting next week for a 30-minute call," or frame it in the sense that you're trying to learn something, right? So I'm trying to transition into this field, and I'm hoping that you can share more about what your day-to-day is like, but I can definitely put some resources with that. Great. Lots of questions. Awesome. Presentation was recorded, so you'll have the ability to watch it over. Great. So what are some methods? This is Larry, this is your question. What are some methods go about practicing with your elevator pitch, depending on the event? So that's a good question. So I think it depends on my goals for the event. And so with that, I try and make sure that, if I want to meet with folks, or if I am meeting with folks based off of the specific event or focus of the event or industry of the event. So for example, if I'm, I went to college at Loyola Chicago, and so if I'm at a religious event or a Jesuit event or something like that, I might be more focused on talking about the work that I do in my day job as it relates to that, or with my alumni work. Whereas if I'm in at an event with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs or something more related to that, I might talk about my international consulting work. So again, sort of part of it is tailoring that message to the audience that you're likely to meet with, as well as aligning it with your goals. So if you're looking to meet with folks who are in this specific industry that you're hoping to get into, maybe adjust your talk to that. Let's see. Yep. So Danny, I think you asked sort of thinking about people who are already in groups, right? So going back to that point of what do you do when trying to join a group? So I've read a little bit about this, and there isn't a sort of clear cut, this is the way that it's always going to work. Again, I think if you can, I always look to try to find people who are in pairs instead of groups. But if you do, sort of try and my advice for you is sort of stand just outside of the group or just outside of the circle, listen to the conversation, and then as something comes up, try and interject. It's something that is going to be a little bit difficult, even I think for the most professional networkers, if you will, but just, try and listen to the conversation, try and see if there's an opportunity for you to interject or add your couple thoughts. Hopefully that helps. Barbara, I believe you asked, did you always wear business attire at a coffee? This, I think, two thoughts with this. So one, it depends on who you're meeting with and also where you met this person. So if you met with them and they're sort of in business attire or business formal, then I'd recommend yes. I think part of it also depends on what you're comfortable with. So, if you're the type of person that, typically dresses business casual for what you do or have been a little bit more comfortable in business casual, by no means you need to go put on a tie and suit if you're a man, or if you put on a suit jacket in that way. But so I think part of it is depending upon how you met the person as well as what you feel most comfortable in. Yep, feel free to share this with your Chicago students. Great. It's absolutely not necessary to be on Twitter, and that's just one way that I have found success in networking and meeting with folks. You can do, so if you're thinking about posting about events or attending a program or feelings or thoughts or reflection after attending an event or a program, you can do the same exact thing on LinkedIn. I do that a number of times, and so that works just the same. And I think that's all of the questions.
Yeah, that's all that I see. If you guys have any others, we're getting to time, so I want to respect your time. So we'll stay on here for like another 5 minutes. If you guys have questions, want to ask us about anything in particular. Otherwise, I will send out the recording probably later today or tomorrow, along with all the slides. I'll also send out a survey, so please fill that out because it'll help us determine what kind of webinars we want to offer in the future. So any advice or things that you have, any feedback is really important for us. But thank you guys so much. Thank you, Tyler, as always, for a great presentation. And let me know, I'll put my contact information here as well in case you have questions about Chicago or the certificates or just want to get in touch with Tyler because I'm in touch with him too.
Let's see, it's somewhere here. Yes, thank you all. If there are additional topics or feedback that you have with this presentation or others, please feel free to reach out. You also know how to get a hold of me if you have any questions. One thing that I'm going to send you is also a sort of a rubric or an assessment. It's from Deborah Fine's The Fine Art of Small Talk, and so there's like 6 or 7 questions that will hopefully be helpful as you set your goals, as you think about sort of assessing where you are currently with networking as well as moving forward and trying to take advantage and build your network in meaningful and engaging ways. But thank you, everyone.